I have lived long enough to know one thing with absolute certainty. Every man and every woman who ever achieved anything worth achieving passed through a season so dark that they questioned whether the sun would ever rise again in their lives. I have sat across from steel magnates who once slept on park benches. I have listened to inventors who heard the word failure spoken over them 10,000 times before they heard the word yes even once. And I have come to understand something the world does not teach in its schools, something the marketplace does not advertise on its billboards, something the easy talkers of this age will never grasp. The hard season is not your enemy. The hard season is your initiation. You came here tonight perhaps because something in your life has cracked. Perhaps a relationship has ended, and the silence in your home now feels louder than any voice ever did. Perhaps your finances have collapsed, and you find yourself counting coins where you once counted blessings. Perhaps your health has betrayed you, or your reputation has been wounded, or the dream you built for 10 years has fallen in a single afternoon. Whatever brought you here, I want you to listen carefully, because what I am about to share is not a sermon, and it is not a lecture. It is a map I drew with my own hands after walking through every kind of darkness a human soul can know. In the years I spent studying the lives of more than 500 of the greatest achievers of my time, I noticed something so consistent that it could not be coincidence. Every single one of them had been broken before they were built. Every single one of them had been buried before they rose. And every single one of them had reached a moment late at night, sitting alone with their own thoughts when they almost gave up. The detail most people overlook is hidden right here. Greatness does not come to those who avoid the storm. Greatness comes to those who learn to walk through it without losing the compass of their inner purpose. Andrew Carnegie once told me that the day he lost a great fortune in a venture, he sat in his office and laughed. I asked him why a man who had just lost so much would laugh, and he gave me an answer I have never forgotten. He said he laughed because he realized in that moment that the money had never been his real wealth. His real wealth was the mind that built the money in the first place, and that mind was untouched by the loss. The fortune was simply a shadow cast by the substance of his thinking, and as long as the substance remained, the shadow could always be cast again. This is the first secret of the hard season. What you have lost is never as important as what you still possess within yourself, but the most surprising part comes only now. Most people, when they enter a hard season, make a fatal mistake. They begin to identify with their loss. They look in the mirror and they no longer see themselves. They see the failure, they see the rejection, they see the bankruptcy, the divorce, the diagnosis, the disgrace. And once a human being begins to identify with what has happened to them, they have surrendered the one thing that no circumstance can ever take from them, which is the power to define who they are from the inside. I have watched men with empty pockets walk like kings, and I have watched men with full pockets walk like beggars. The difference was never in their accounts. The difference was always in their identification. Thomas Edison's laboratory burned to the ground when he was 67 years old. Decades of research, irreplaceable prototypes, notebooks filled with the most valuable thinking of his life, all consumed in a single night. His son found him standing in the smoke, watching the flames, and the boy thought his father would be devastated. But Edison turned to him and said simply that all his mistakes had just been burned up and that they could now begin again, fresh. Within 3 weeks, he had recovered most of what was lost. Within months, he had advanced beyond it. He understood something most people never understand. The fire that destroys your old work is also the fire that frees you from being a prisoner of it. I want you to consider, very carefully, the possibility that your hard season is not a punishment, but a clearing. Nature herself uses fire to renew the forest. Certain seeds will not even germinate until they have been touched by flame. Tell me, my friend, is it possible that something within you has been sealed for years, waiting for exactly this kind of heat? Here begins the darkest game of the subconscious mind. When a hard season comes, the untrained mind begins to whisper to itself in the language of defeat. I will never recover. This is who I am now. The good times are behind me. I am not strong enough. And every time you accept one of these whispers without challenging it, you are practicing autosuggestion in reverse. You are programming your subconscious to manifest the very outcome you fear most. The subconscious mind does not argue with you. It does not negotiate. It simply receives whatever you repeatedly tell it, and it sets to work building the conditions that match your inner declaration. This is the great law the unsuccessful have never learned. You are not suffering because of what happened to you. You are suffering because of what you have begun to tell yourself about what happened to you. I learned this lesson myself in a way I have rarely spoken about. There was a period in my life when I had nothing. My research had not yet borne fruit. My reputation was uncertain. My family looked at me with the kind of patient pity that is harder to bear than open contempt. I walked the streets in a coat that was too thin for the winter, and I rehearsed in my mind every reason why I had failed. And then one night, sitting alone in a small rented room, I caught myself. I caught the voice. I heard, as if for the first time, the relentless current of defeat I had been pouring into my own ears for months. And I made a decision that changed the entire trajectory of my life. I decided I would no longer be the prosecutor of my own soul. You must understand something about the architecture of consciousness. Inside every human being, there is a courtroom. There is a judge, there is a prosecutor, and there is a defender. In the hard season, most people allow the prosecutor to dominate. The prosecutor brings up every mistake, every embarrassment, every missed opportunity, every harsh word ever spoken against you, and presents it all as final evidence of your unworthiness. And the defender, and the part of you that knows your true value, sits silent, exhausted, out-argued. The first act of recovery is not action, it is not strategy, it is not even prayer. The first act of recovery is to silence the prosecutor and let the defender speak. What Hill discovered about this subject is deeply unsettling, and I will share it with you plainly. The thoughts you allow to repeat in your mind during a hard season carve grooves into your nervous system that can last for the rest of your life. A man who spends 6 months telling himself that he is finished may emerge from his troubles in better external circumstances, but he will carry the inner conviction of being finished into every future endeavor. He will sabotage himself in ways he cannot trace. The hard season does not damage you through its events. It damages you through the inner story you write about its events. And this is also why the hard season can become the greatest gift if you write a different story. Abraham Lincoln lost his mother as a boy. He lost his sister. He lost his first love to illness. He failed in business not once, but twice. He lost election after election, 8 defeats in total before he became president. He suffered such severe depression that his friends, on more than one occasion, removed sharp objects from his room because they feared what he might do to himself. And yet, when he finally entered the White House, he carried into that office a depth of compassion, a patience with human weakness, and a moral seriousness that could only have been forged in exactly the kind of furnace he had endured. Lincoln was not great in spite of his hard seasons. He was great because of them. The seasons did not delay his destiny. The seasons were his destiny preparing him. Now look at the world around you in this present age. The modern man and the modern woman live in conditions of comfort that would have astonished any king of the ancient world. And yet they suffer from a strange and unprecedented affliction. They have lost the ability to endure. They have been raised on instant gratification, on a culture that promises that any moment of discomfort is a malfunction to be eliminated rather than a teacher to be heeded. And so when the inevitable hard season arrives, and it always arrives, for it is woven into the fabric of being human, they have no inner equipment to meet it. They reach for distraction. They reach for the endless scroll that numbs without nourishing. And the hard season, instead of becoming an initiation, becomes an injury that never heals. I tell you this not to condemn the modern soul, but to wake it. You were not born to be soft in this way. The same blood that runs in your veins ran in the veins of those who crossed oceans in wooden ships, who built cities out of forests, who held communities together through plagues and wars and famines that would dissolve the spirit of any pampered generation. The capacity for endurance is your inheritance. It has only been buried under 1,000 small comforts. And the hard season, my friend, is the very thing that will dig it out of you again. The real turning point begins here. There is a practice I want to share with you. a practice I have given to many men and women who came to me in their darkest moments, and I have never seen it fail when it was applied with sincerity. It is the practice of the deliberate inner declaration. Each morning, before the world reaches you, before the news reaches you, before the worries reach you, you must speak to your own subconscious in the language of the person you are becoming, not the language of the circumstances you are leaving. You must say, with feeling, not with mere words, I am being prepared, I am being shaped. What is happening to me is not the end of my story. It is the chapter that makes the rest of my story possible. And you must keep saying it until the part of you that does not yet believe it begins slowly to believe it. The subconscious mind is like a garden. It does not care whether you plant flowers or weeds. It will grow whatever you put into it with feeling and repetition. Most people in their hard season plant weeds without knowing they are planting. They water those weeds with their tears, and then they wonder why their inner landscape is so desolate. You must become a deliberate gardener of your own mind. You must select your seeds. You must guard the gates of your attention as if your entire future depended on it, because it does. I want to tell you about a woman I met years ago in a small town in Pennsylvania. Her husband had died, leaving her with 3 children and a debt larger than the value of their home. She had no profession, no inheritance, no influential friends. By every measure the world uses, she was finished. And yet, when I sat with her in her kitchen, I noticed something extraordinary. She was not speaking the language of the defeated. She was speaking very quietly the language of the becoming. She told me that she had decided on the night of her husband's funeral that her children would not grow up watching a mother who had surrendered. She said she did not yet know how she would do it, but she knew who she would be while doing it. Within 7 years, she owned 3 businesses. The world saw a sudden success. I saw the harvest of a single decision made in the kitchen of a grieving woman. Let me speak to you now about a paradox that took me many years to understand. The very thing you are trying to escape in your hard season is often the very thing you most need. I do not mean that the suffering itself is good. I mean that within the suffering there is a teacher, and the teacher will not leave until the lesson is received. If you flee the lesson, the teacher will reappear in another form, in another season, in another disguise, until you finally turn and face what you have been refusing to face. This is why some people seem to live the same painful chapter over and over again, with different names and different settings, but the same underlying ache. The ache is not their punishment. The ache is the unfinished lesson, knocking patiently at the door of their awareness. Ask yourself, in this hard season, what is the lesson knocking at my door? What is the part of me that I have been refusing to look at? What is the truth I have been postponing? What is the false self I built that is now collapsing? And what real self might be revealed if I let the collapse complete itself? These are not comfortable questions. They are not meant to be comfortable. They are meant to be true. And the truth, in the hard season, is the only currency that purchases freedom. I have observed that most people, when they enter the dark night of the soul, make one of 2 choices, and these choices determine everything that follows. The first choice is to harden. They wall themselves off. They become cynical. They tell themselves they will never trust again, never love again, never risk again, never believe again. They survive, in a manner of speaking, but they survive as a smaller version of themselves, a fortress with no one inside. The second choice is to soften, to let the hard season break them open rather than break them down. The hardened ones often appear strong, but their strength is brittle. The softened ones often appear vulnerable, but their strength is the strength of the ocean, which cannot be broken because it does not resist. Choose the second path, my friend. Let yourself be opened, not closed. There is no shame in the tears you have shed. There is no weakness in the nights you could not sleep. There is no failure in the moments you wanted to give up but did not. These are the marks of a soul being made, not a soul being unmade. And one day when you are sitting on the other side of this season, you will look back and see with a clarity you cannot have now that every tear was a tributary to the river of your becoming. The Mastermind principle teaches us that no one builds anything alone. Every great achievement in human history was the work of an alliance. even when the world saw only the name of one person on the cover. In the hard season, the temptation is to isolate, to withdraw, to convince yourself that no one understands, no one cares, no one can help. This is one of the most dangerous lies the mind tells itself in pain. You must reach out, even when reaching out feels impossible. You must find the one or two souls in your life who can hold a steady frequency of belief in you when your own frequency has dropped. The mind held in isolation will turn against itself. The mind held in community begins slowly to remember its strength. There is a passage in the lives of nearly all the great achievers that I have come to call the long winter. It is the period, often years long, when nothing visible is happening, when no one is applauding, when even those closest to them have begun to doubt. Lincoln had his long winter. Edison had his long winter. The Wright brothers had their long winter, watched by a world that had concluded human flight was impossible. In the long winter, the work continues underground, like the roots of a tree in the cold months, invisibly preparing for a spring no one yet believes in. If you are in your long winter now, the absence of visible result is not the absence of progress. The roots are growing, the character is forming. And when the spring comes, and it will come, you will rise with a strength no one will be able to explain because they did not see what you were doing in the dark. I have come, in my old age, to believe that the universe itself is structured in such a way that it tests every great desire before it grants it. The desire arrives in your heart. You begin to move toward it. And then, almost without exception, an obstacle appears, a delay, a setback, a defeat. Most people interpret this obstacle as a sign that the desire was not meant for them. But I have come to believe the opposite. The obstacle is the entrance fee. If your desire could be achieved without resistance, it would be too small a desire to be worthy of you. The size of the obstacle is, very often, the measure of the size of the destiny. Persistence is not a personality trait. It is a decision renewed daily, sometimes hourly, sometimes minute by minute. I have known men of brilliant intelligence who failed because they could not persist. And I have known men of modest intelligence who succeeded because they could not be made to quit. The persistent ones did not feel more confident than the others. They simply made, again and again, the small decision to take one more step, to make one more attempt, to give it one more day. And the cumulative effect of those small decisions over years and decades was a life that the unpersistent could only dream about. In the hard season, your persistence will be tested in ways you cannot anticipate. There will be a day when you have done everything right and the results have not come. There will be a day when someone you trusted betrays you. There will be a day when you stand in front of the mirror and you do not recognize the tired person looking back. On that day, the only victory available to you may be the victory of not quitting. And I tell you with all the seriousness of a man who has watched many lives that this victory is enough. This victory is everything. The day you do not quit, when quitting would have been understandable, is the day you become the kind of person who can no longer be defeated by anything. I want to speak to you now about the 6 ghosts of fear, because in the hard season these ghosts become very loud. There is the fear of poverty, which whispers that you will never have enough. There is the fear of criticism, which whispers that others will judge you. There is the fear of ill health. There is the fear of loss of love, which whispers that you will be abandoned. There is the fear of old age, which whispers that you have run out of time. And there is the fear of death, which is the shadow behind all the others. In the hard season, these 6 ghosts gather around your bed and speak in turns. The untrained soul listens and is paralyzed. The trained soul recognizes them, names them, and tells them with quiet authority to leave. They cannot stay where they are not invited. The recognition itself is the dismissal. Practice this in your hard season. When the fear comes, name it. This is the fear of poverty speaking. This is not the truth. This is not me. This is a ghost, and ghosts have no power except the power I give them. Speak to the fear as a parent speaks to a frightened child, firmly, kindly, but without surrendering authority. The fear will not vanish overnight, but each time you name it and refuse to obey it, it becomes a little quieter, a little smaller, a little less able to direct your behavior. I have one more thing to share with you tonight, and it is perhaps the most important thing I have learned in all my years of studying the human condition. The hard season does not last. It feels eternal while you are inside it. It feels as if the sun has set permanently, as if the laws of light have been suspended in your particular case. But this is the optical illusion of suffering. Suffering compresses time. It makes a single afternoon feel like a year, but time itself continues to move, and the conditions that produced your hard season are continuously changing, even when you cannot see the changes. The very act of enduring is itself transforming you and transforming your circumstances in ways that will not become visible until later. I have watched men who were certain they would die in their poverty become wealthy beyond their imagination. I have watched women who were certain they would never love again find loves more profound than the ones they lost. The mind, in the hard season, is a poor predictor of the future. It sees only the current darkness and projects it forward indefinitely. But the future is not made of the current darkness. The future is made of every choice you make from this point forward, every thought you cultivate, every decision you renew, every ghost you refuse to obey. So keep your head up, my friend, not because the world is easy, not because the pain is unreal, not because the loss does not matter. Keep your head up because the head that is held up can still see the horizon, and the horizon is where the dawn appears. The head that is bowed in defeat cannot see the dawn even when it is breaking. You must choose in this season the posture of the one who is being prepared, not the posture of the one who is being destroyed. The events may be the same. The interpretation makes all the difference. I leave you with a question, and I ask you to sit with it tonight before you sleep. If your hard season is preparing you for something, for a version of yourself, for a chapter of your life, for a contribution to the world that you cannot yet imagine, what is it preparing you for? Do not rush to answer. Simply hold the question the way you might hold a small flame on a windy night, sheltering it with your hands until it grows steady. The answer will come in its own time, in its own way. And when it comes, you will understand, perhaps for the first time, that this season you are walking through is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a chapter so important that all the previous chapters were merely the preface to it. When was the last time you truly listened to what your hard season was trying to tell you? When was the last time you trusted that the same intelligence that grows the forests and turns the seasons and sets the stars in their courses might also be at work, quietly, patiently, in the difficult chapter of your own life? Listen tonight. Listen. With the part of you that knows things your conscious mind has not yet learned, the voice is there. It has been there all along. And it is saying, with a tenderness you have perhaps forgotten, that you are not finished. You are being made.